the world that we live in today, it's all about taking a picture, isn't it? Selfie, that sort of stuff. You remember that craze a while back where if you went to a restaurant, everybody then had to put their picture of their meal and post it on a social media platform. I didn't do it, by the way. Not bothered, you know. But what I found fascinating was that all of these people did, and they told you where they were dining, what they had, and all this sort of stuff. It always reminded me of a cartoon about two couples sat opposite each other at a dinner table in a restaurant, and he says, "Didn't you like your meal?" And she says, "Yes, why?" "Well, you didn't post it on Instagram, you never did it." And you think, he said it all about that moment in time, didn't he? But of course, one woman who was very clever, really jumping on the very first bandwagon of, well, some people might say publicity, narcissism, whatever you want to call it, was this particular lady. And she had a fantastic royal connection. And guess what? Some of the royals even used her and her pictures to make sure that they got some of the hottest roles in Hollywood. As ever, let me explain. Really good to see you today. Thank you so much as ever for your time. Are you all right? I'm all right. Literally in the very heart of London right now. Always nice to have your company, whatever you're doing. I am fascinated, as many people know who watch this channel on a regular basis, literally about royal history, because when you think about it, I always look and think, well, how did these people get their roles? I mean, you know, you look back, say, way back to the time of Henry VIII and stuff, and there were all of these people around him, weren't there? Sort of people that were supposed to advise him, giving all the best sort of advice and all that sort of stuff. And you kind of think to yourself, how could they have trusted them? But I guess it's no different to today. When you think about all those ladies in waiting, say, around Anne Boleyn, no doubt feeding back exactly what she was thinking and saying behind the scenes, of course, back to King Henry. And when you fast forward to today, well, we similarly have it, don't we? It's called social media. But this particular lady, Dorothy Wilding, was very, very clever. She was just a unique person because at the very start of the burgeoning sort of photography boom, she realised that not only taking great stills and portraits of monuments and things like that, but also what she could do and what really made it interesting was to take the individual. And she started doing that. And way back in 1914, she managed to rustle together, in our money, about £60 to open her first photography studio. This created a sensation because people obviously didn't have cameras and she could put certain sets and stills behind them. It really was something of a sensation. Fast forward and her name truly decided to take off, all thanks to the, well, moving picture imagery, because lots of stars wanted their still pictures to promote themselves. They realised that people could go in and see them in the cinema, but to give out fan cards, well, that was something different. And she could make them look beautiful for the very early touches of what we now know, of course, as Photoshop, but it was called retouching, removing, of course, anything blemishes so that they look perfect. Now, fast forward a few years and very quickly, not only has she photographed some of the biggest stars in the world at the very start of their careers, the likes, of course, of Noel Coward, Charlie Chaplin and others, but this got to the ears of the British royal family. And that's because her pictures were so good. I mean, truly were marvellous. Now, where it gets even more interesting is she literally was asked to be the chief photographer for the coronation. That's right. And way back in the late 30s, as you can imagine, that particular coronation was something to behold. It made her a household name. And she became the very first royal photographer in residence. But that didn't stop Dorothy Wilding. She was very busy. She also became the very first royal photographer to be given a royal warrant, and this was literally tabloid sensational news, as you can imagine. I just think it's terrific to find these things out. But it's this imagery that truly cemented her power. Yes, these images which really were iconic and shown around the world, not only that, used on coins and notes. And in this particular portrait, this was the official portrait that Dorothy Wilding took, which was then sent around all the empire, the Commonwealth, all the schools who had to put up a portrait, this picture of our brilliant monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. As I've said to you before, I think that should be compulsory now, and you should learn about the British Empire and our history. If you're over here, you get the picture. But moving forward, what was fascinating was the fact that many of the Hollywood stars who had been photographed by her, including the likes of Yul Brynner and Douglas Fairbanks Jr., who I was very lucky enough to meet very briefly when I was young, incredible when you think, you just, wow, But he, of course, was also part of her, shall we say, regular update portraits. She liked taking certain people throughout their careers. Now, Yul Brynner, when he had his portrait first taken by Dorothy Wilding, nothing really much happened, because although she'd had the Royal Association, this was quite a few years on. Now, the 1953 coronation and then subsequently these wonderful pictures of Queen Elizabeth II meant that he really could truly push ahead. And suddenly Hollywood studios were very fascinated in all the stars that had been photographed by Dorothy Wilding and their association with royalty. And of course they felt that if they cast these certain individuals like Yule and others, well, they may of course get a royal premiere, some kind of royal association, and more importantly, could Dorothy maybe even come to the set and take some action still portraits, stuff like that. You get the picture. So all thanks to this particular lady who was groundbreaking and really needs to be read into. She really was terrific. The other side of the coin is she literally made what we now know to be the ultimate image of Queen Elizabeth to be the iconic image that we still all know today. Lots of people along the way in history get forgotten, and I think Dorothy Wilding has truly been forgotten. But truly, when you look into her history, exactly what she achieved, and all the wonderful work that she did to make people even more famous than they were, and more importantly, what she did for herself, becoming, as I say, the very first lady to pick up a royal warrant as an official photographer. Now that really was history in the making. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.